Shui Jing had once told Feng Zhao that, in the music world of the new era, symphonic structures had a rather refined flavor and were different from the more common musical styles in the new era. The public did not have a high acceptance toward it, and there were not many who would study this, instead choosing to play with electronic music. Feng Zhao's emergence had let symphonies and electronic music blend perfectly. Even though it was still not truly fashionable, at least more people were more accepting of it. In the world, the number of people who could perfectly blend symphonies with electronic music was not just limited to only Feng Zhao. However, to build a reputation for oneself and be willing to selflessly share all his techniques, there was only Feng Zhao. This was also why there had been so much hype within the community for new voices in symphonic composition before it had even been released. This sort of situation was rarely seen, and just by spending a little money, one would gain the knowledge that he wanted. This sort of chance was hard to let go. In the past, even if people wanted to learn, they would be put off by the high entry requirements and hard to understand, and use these excuses to cower. Now, people who were interested could first read up on the explanations in the book and the shared experiences while getting a feel of things. Interest was all the foundation that one needed. Although music software could synthesize many sounds, many people would still rather use traditional methods of recording, such as hiring a band or an orchestra to play at a professional studio. This way, they could listen to and feel the details, find places that needed improvement, and make changes on the spot. Apparently, in these sorts of circumstances, it was easier to gain inspiration. This was probably the human factor. Because when an orchestra played according to the score, their own feelings would be assimilated inside. This was something that could stir up the emotions of a composer. It could be said that Mazao was the continent that had the least symphonic music. Just as that student had said, in the past, the symphony recording studios were often empty and used for other styles. However, now, despite having an advanced booking, there was still a queue. If even Mazao was like this, what about the other continents? While Feng Zhao was pondering that question, a few more people came in from outside. One of them scanned the hall and grumbled, "There are too many people. I think the CEO of Odd Music Company has plans to increase the number of symphony recording studios, but I have no idea when it will be ready." The person beside him, with eyes full of anticipation, plucked out his earpiece and said, "I think this piece of mine will be very successful. I used the music software at home to produce a demo piece, and it sounds very good. Who knows, I might become popular soon. Or maybe I can be like Feng Zhao and be regarded by Fiery Bird." Everyone wanted to be the second Feng Zhao. Youngsters in the music industry paid attention to Feng Zhao. One reason was his talent and achievements, the other reason was also the main factor, his earnings. Artists were human too. Other than certain madmen, the majority of them were common people who would have desires. Upon seeing Feng Zhao making so much earnings from his few symphonic movements and even receiving an invitation from Fiery Bird, who would not be tempted by that fame and fortune? They were all of a similar age group, they all enjoyed music, and they were all from various schools from all continents. If Feng Zhao could do it, why not them too? Therefore, more people attempted to take up the challenge, resulting in better recording companies and Qingqing being fully booked almost every day. Good orchestras needed to work overtime every day, and the ones with better reputations had to be booked several days in advance. Feng Zhao glanced at the newly arrived youngsters before looking at the time. The ones ahead of him in the queue, Wheat Dish Studio, had given 1 p.m. as the forecasted time that they would be done. They had already overshot by 10 minutes and had not given an explanation. Upstairs, the people from Wheat Dish were also in a bad mood. Their recording had not gone smoothly. The problem did not lie with the orchestra's performance, instead, it was that the finished recording was different from what they had expected. Wheat Dish Studio was set up by 3-year 4 students from Mazao Music Academy and had only been recently established. Other than those 3, the other people in the studio that were helping them temporarily were their juniors from school. Something is wrong. A youngster dressed fashionably scrutinized the scores he had written himself, his face full of distress. "Ding Xiaotao, how do you think we should correct this?" The short-haired girl beside him leaned against the back of her chair, both legs on the control panel and facing the ceiling. Hearing her companion, she took a deep breath and sighed. "Let's properly correct it when we get back." "No. I feel that it's just lacking a little something for me to find out where the problem lies. Let the orchestra play once more. Maybe I will be able to figure out the answer." That youngster was unwilling to give up. In the past, they had tried out electronic music and not Mazao's traditional music styles because they thought that the people who did electronic music were cool. After watching many blockbusters, they had felt that the stunning background music was also pretty cool, so they had switched over to try it out, but they hadn't had much success. Originally, they had made plans to return to working purely on electronic music, but the release of new voices and symphonic composition had given them renewed hope. The three of them had sealed themselves off for a period of time and then came here to produce the results of their seclusion. However, reality was a harsh slap in the face. It was as if their fiery and passionate hearts had been doused with cold water. Obviously, this portion should harmonize really well. Why does it sound wrong? The last youngster was also at a loss as he fidgeted and studied the patterns on his sleeve tattoo. Duo, go and see who is queuing up behind us. If it is no one important, tell them something to continue waiting or to queue up for another recording studio. We are going to extend our stay here for another 2 hours. I can feel some inspiration coming my way. In a moment I will start all over. You go outside and check it out first while I amend the scores. Zhang Hang, you are saying this for the third time today. The tattooed youth unwillingly got up to head out. His uncle was a senior executive at Odd Music Company, so he could directly take a shortcut for some small matters. Normal clients were not able to check the background or detailed information of the people queuing up after them. The information online only stated what the client who made the booking left behind. The people from Wheat Dish could only find out that the person behind them had made an individual application and nothing more. The tattooed youth had gotten used to this and went to find someone who could check the information of the party behind. Oh, little duo came. The person in charge of Odd Music's technical department did not even need to raise his head. Just glancing at the tattooed sleeve, he knew who had come. Duo's nickname was Duo. As he'd gotten older, Duo had felt that every time someone called him it sounded like they were calling a dog, so he did not let people call him that. Now, only people who were close to him used that name. Duo cackled as he walked in. Uncle Wiley, are you busy? Say it, what do you want to check this time? Your studio has exceeded the time limit. There was no rebuke in Wiley's voice. Exceeding the time was a small matter. A little compensation fee to the party behind them would resolve it. I want to see who is queuing up after me, maybe tell him to wait a while more or perhaps queue for another studio, Duo said. Wiley understood. Duo wanted to find out the other party's identity and detailed information. Let me see, behind you is a booking by a foreigner from Yanzhou, Wiley said. If he isn't from Mazhou, that's even better. We don't have to bother about foreigners. We have priority for locals. I guess we will ask him to queue for another studio. However, this name seems a little familiar, as if I have heard it somewhere. Is he famous? What's his name? Duo asked. He's called Feng Zhao. Feng Zhao. Duo did not bother about the rules any longer. He rushed over and pushed Wiley aside and squeezed in front of the screen, carefully examining the information and photograph of the person who made the booking. You know this person? Wiley asked. Duo took a deep breath, then took another look to make sure his eyes were not playing tricks on him. Can I check the surveillance footage of the waiting hall? No way. Wiley shook his head. Company policy. Other than the technical staff in the monitor room, no one else was allowed to view the surveillance footage. Doing so was a breach of privacy, and the company had strict rules regarding it. If it were not for the backing of his uncle, who was a senior executive in the company, Wiley would not even have considered helping him. Hey. You haven't told me, who is this Feng Zhao? Duo did not bother to reply and instead rushed straight out. When he ran into the waiting hall, his sudden braking caused the soles of his shoes to create a sharp squeaking sound. The ear-piercing sound made everyone, including Feng Zhao, look over. Duo scanned the waiting hall and his line of sight stopped at Feng Zhao. After that, he turned and rushed straight up and into the recording studio. You guys, you won't believe who is queuing behind us. Guess who I just saw? Duo was so excited he was practically shouting. Zhang Hang and Ding Xiaotao were discussing where the music score had gone wrong, but their train of thought had been scared away by Duo's abrupt shouting. The two of them stared at Duo as if they wanted to peel him alive. Duo did not care one bit, excitedly continuing, Feng Zhao. That Feng Zhao. That Feng Zhao. Zhang Hang and Ding Xiaotao were both stuttering. Duo picked up the copy of New Voices in Symphonic Composition and pointed at the name under the Deputy Editor segment. This one. Zhang Hang and Ding Xiaotao looked at each other and ran out at the same time. Duo also followed and did not forget to show off to a bunch of his good friends in a group chat. Today I ran into Feng Zhao. Somewhere else in Qingqing, in a dormitory at Mazhou Music Academy. The FCK. Feng Zhao is in Mazhou. Who did you say? Is Feng Zhao really in Mazhou? Duo said it in a group chat. They met him when recording over at Odd Music. Let's go to Odd Music. You all are going. I still have 2 more periods of optional lessons. Skip classes. In a classroom at the teaching block. A teacher stepped into his classroom for his lesson on arrangement and realized that there were only a third of the students in class, and he was left puzzled. This round, there were not many students from far away, and he had not received any absence from class requests. Where is everyone? There are supposed to be many more people. Where did they go? The arrangement teacher asked. Teacher, they all skipped classes to go see Feng Zhao, a student answered. Outrageous. Even if they were chasing a star, they can't? Who did they go see? The arrangement teacher was stunned. They went to see Feng Zhao, the deputy editor of New Voices in Symphonic Composition who became popular in a short time. Feng Zhao came. Where? The arrangement teacher asked. Odd Music Company's building. I heard a fellow student was recording over there when they ran into him. The student had just finished his sentence when the arrangement teacher said, "This class will be self-revision." With that he hurriedly left. The news that Feng Zhao, the deputy editor of New Voices in Symphonic Composition was in Muzhou recording at Odd Music Company spread fast within the Muzhou music scene. The fastest to react were students of the Music Academy who were interested in the symphonic genre. Many skipped classes and rushed over to Odd Music Company. Thus, on an afternoon where there was no sheep herding competition, many cars appeared at the entrance of Odd Music Company. Odd Music security guards did not think much of it. Recently, there had been a lot more people coming to the recording studio. Today was just a little more than normal. However, they quickly realized more and more people were coming and they were asking the same question, where is Feng Zhao? Feng Zhao. Who is Feng Zhao? They were just in charge of the company's security and knew nothing about the music scene. They might have known some popular singers or superstars, but not much of others in the industry. Only when a supervisor in the company told them did they know that a rather impressive person had come. In the large waiting hall, the 3 members of Wheat Dish Studio had ran in front of Feng Zhao. Earlier, when Shi Duo had rushed in and glanced over, Zuo Yu's professional instincts had been placed on alert. He was ready to obstruct the 3 of them when Feng Zhao waved his hands, signaling not to. Greetings, Teacher Feng, we are Year 4 student from Muzhou Music Academy. The 3 of them handed Feng Zhao their student IDs. Ding Xiaotao and Zhang Heng passed over the books in their hands, flipped open the cover, and bashfully asked, Teacher Feng, could we have your autograph? After thinking for quite a bit, Ding Xiaotao had settled on addressing him as teacher. Since he had imparted knowledge to them, they would call him teacher. Feng Zhao smiled at the 3 of them, took the pen and books, and proceeded to sign them. We are working on our composition right now, blending symphonies with electronic music, but we have encountered some problems. Could we consult you? Zhang Heng asked. Go ahead, replied Feng Zhao. Zhang Heng spoke about the process and some of his thoughts about blending the sounds for their composition. Did you have a general plan? Feng Zhao asked. Yes. Just that, when we listen to it, something does not sound right, as if it was not blended properly. Can I take a look at the score sheet? Sure. Zhang Heng handed over the score sheet that was full of amendments. He was not worried that Feng Zhao would copy their score. This was the Feng Zhao, would he even need to copy their messy and half-completed song scores? However, looking at the piece of paper full of corrections, the 3 of them felt a little embarrassed. How about letting me tidy it up first and show you a brand new copy after all the amendments? This copy does not look good, Zhang Heng asked. No need. Feng Zhao studied the score sheet in his hand seriously. Although the score sheet was messy and the paper was full of markings and corrections, it showed the number of times they had tried to improve their draft. Feng Zhao could see what the 3 of them were thinking from it. Lend me the pen, Feng Zhao said. Sure, free to use it. Ding Xiaotao hurriedly fished out from her bag and handed it over to Feng Zhao. Feng Zhao used the pen and circled out a few places. He proceeded to analyze it and tell them his opinions. Zhang Heng and the other 2 listened attentively. They realized that Feng Zhao not only talked about the score sheet, he could also speculate as to their thought processes through the amendments. He also accurately pointed out the points in their general plan where they had felt something was wrong and gave them a few reasons. This way, they could finish the rest by themselves. As Feng Zhao was explaining to them, others in the waiting room also curiously watched. Upon hearing Teacher Feng, some guessed whether it was the Feng Zhao that they knew. When they saw him signing on the copy of New Voices in Symphonic Composition, their suspicions were confirmed. Is it really Feng Zhao? Someone cried out. Someone else from another genre had a blank look on his face. Who is Feng Zhao? Is he famous? Probably some rich master from an aristocratic family. He even has a bodyguard. Not necessarily. Who knows, he might be a celebrity. I have never seen him among any manhwa stars. A foreign celebrity. All this for a foreign star. They looked down on the behavior of the bunch of young people trying to chase a celebrity. Those who did symphonic genres could not put up with it any longer. You guys do pop music, right? It's normal not to know him. Now only those who do symphonies and new era electronic music would know the name Feng Zhao. Have you heard of New Voices in Symphonic Composition? He was a contributor and sub-editor. Yesterday, I think a well-known musician said that symphonies and electronics would bring about a new wave of music. Just take a look at all these people sitting there. All of them have a booking for the symphony recording studio. A slightly older person asked, "Are you talking about Yanzhao Sci-Fi Wing Media's Feng Zhao? The one that composed the 100-year period of destruction, received an invite from Fiery Bird, and helped great master Shui Jing compile New Voices of Symphonic Composition, that Feng Zhao." Even if they did not have interest in the symphony genre, a while back, the book had been all the rage within the community, so they would still know of it. No wonder I felt that he looked familiar. I also want his autograph. Me too. Wait for me, let me inform everyone in the chat group. Therefore, Zuoyu watched as a bunch of people came over. There were still others that rushed over upon receiving the news. In a moment, the waiting hall became crowded. Hello, I'm from Qingqing University's arts group. Recently, I have been studying the style of symphonic structures. I'm a student from Manhwa Music Academy too. I'm from XX Company. Zuoyu observed everyone that came close. He could use his arms to block off the nearest people, but as there were too many, even if Zuoyu had more limbs, there was no way he could block off everyone in the surrounding area. Boss, I feel that we should. Zuoyu wanted to leave the place when he saw a middle-aged man in a suit head over. The people he brought along cleared a path. Teacher Fang. Teacher Fang, I am CY, Deputy CEO of Odd Music. The company has prepared a room for you to rest. Afterward he addressed the crowd, "Everyone, please do not worry. Later on, Odd Music Company will provide a chance for interaction." Recently, the company's symphony studio was overbooked every day. The higher-ups had naturally paid attention and understood the reason. Of course they knew what the name Feng Zhao implied. This was a chance to raise the company's reputation. All of Odd Music Company's departments had started to move. They had also increased the number of security guards at the entrance and spent money to engage temporary workers from a protective services company. Even their deputy CEO, CY, had personally come out to invite Feng Zhao. Feng Zhao also knew that staying here was not a good idea. After signing a few more books from people beside him, he returned the pen to Ding Xiaotao. "Pardon me, I have to leave for a bit." Feng Zhao had never thought that something like this would happen. However, he was not intimidated by the scene that unfolded as he followed the deputy CEO and left the waiting hall. They arrived at a lounge for distinguished guests, and he realized there were people waiting inside. There were 5 people in total. 3 were top executives from Odd Music, and the other 2 were the principal of Manhwa Music Academy and his granddaughter, who coincidentally happened to be recording a song today. The principal had brought his granddaughter to his good friend's company to do a recording and had never expected to have such a great opportunity. But having met quite a few great masters in the industry, he was not like the bunch of rowdy youngsters who were so stirred up. After the customary introductions, the principal finally stated his true objective. "Young teacher Fang, are you interested to come to Manhwa Music Academy to give a lecture?" Half an hour later, Odd Music Company opened a large hall capable of fitting more than 1,000 people. In the past, this place had been used to demonstrate their newest models of sound recording equipment and installations. The hall was a place for promotion and publicity, and now it being used to house a temporary meet and greet session. Feng Zhao would answer questions for 1 hour, and after that, there would be an autograph session. Before leaving for the meet and greet session, Feng Zhao made a call to Duan Qianji and told her about the situation here and how he would be cooperating with the Manhwa Music Academy's principal, who would arrange a place for Feng Zhao to lecture. As there were way more interested parties for his lecture than seats, they had come to a decision that the class would be broadcast online as well. At Manhwa's side, it would be an exclusive broadcast by Manhwa Music Academy. As for Yanzhao, Feng Zhao decided to leave it to Sci-Fi Wing to arrange the broadcast. Other continents were having discussions to stream the broadcast at the moment. Duan Qianji was very happy when she received the news and immediately got her staff to set up the frequency for the broadcast as well as announce the news of Feng Zhao's lecture and post the details online. After a series of orders had been handed out, Duan Qianji sat down in her own office and browsed through the discussions online as she chuckled to herself. He really went out to expand his profession indeed. Shui Jing had been invited all over the world to lecture due to the release of new voices in symphonic composition. As Feng Zhao was contracted to Psi Leveler Wing, he did not have complete freedom, and due to matters that he had to attend to, he had not gone along with Shui Jing. This time, Feng Zhao had been caught in Muzhou. Having received the news, Shui Jing was rather supportive of Feng Zhao personally lecturing and contacted him right away. When the time comes for your lecture, there will surely be a lot of industry seniors, but you don't have to be nervous. Just take it like how you were discussing with me and say whatever you wish to say. I have spoken to a few old friends in Muzhou. They will not post any tricky questions and will help you when there is a need to. In a tone of an old senior looking after the younger generation, Shui Jing exhorted again and again. When Shui Jing finally finished, Feng Zhao said, "Thank you. I don't get nervous." Hey, when you're standing there with 1,000 pair of eyes glued to you, can you still be so sure? When is your lecture? Tomorrow afternoon. So fast. Don't you need to prepare? There is no need. I have something to attend to now. You little, never mind, don't put too much pressure on yourself for your first class. I don't feel pressure. The next day, when Feng Zhao left the residence the school had arranged for him, there was already somebody waiting for him to escort him to his lecture. The place where the lecture would be held was a communication center. On most days, professors and masters with high reputations would give reports or lectures there. It was rare that the speaker today was a young person who was of a similar age to students of the school. Muzhou Music Academy's principal picked out 10 questions from the students' suggestions and went backstage to see Feng Zhao sitting there watching a sheep herding competition. Was he watching the video to relieve stress or was he born senseless? The principal thought to himself. When it was about time, Feng Zhao stepped into the hall and walked up the stage. He calmly scanned the hall that was filled to the brim, briefly gave an introduction, and went straight to the main topic. Feng Zhao's was not the plain and simple kind of teaching method, yet he was able to use simple words to make the questions more penetrating. He also used a few famous Muzhou songs as examples. Even people who had never come into contact with the symphony genre could mostly understand what he was saying. Feng Zhao's examples were not just limited to Muzhou songs, he used songs from other continents as well, which made viewers of the live broadcast feel involved. Oh. To think it could be used like that. Wow, you can blend this sort of sound. Who knows, I might be able to use it in my own compositions. How did I never think of this? How does he know so much? Those present at the lecture or watching the broadcast felt as if their hearts were deeply stirred. The formless manner of Feng Zhao's words and actions carried some pressure. The student leaders sitting in the first few rows fidgeted in unease. The arrangement teacher also straightened his back. He kept feeling a little nervous and wondered what was up. When he was giving lectures, he would not feel anything. Now, he was all tensed up just listening to a lecture, weird. In the hall that could fit more than 1,000, the front 10 rows were filled with student leaders, teachers, and other interested Muzhou citizens of reputable fame. The students were seated behind, and many more that were unable to grab a spot were watching the live broadcast online. The Academy's forums were also having heated discussions. I finally know why Feng Zhao rose so high despite being just 2 years older than us. Take a look, everyone, wherever he stands, that aura. TSK reminds me of my former teacher back then. To actually reveal everything, isn't he even the least bit afraid that, once others learn his methods and techniques, they will trample down on him? Do you know what some industry insiders call Feng Zhao? Big Fool Feng. It came about when Feng Zhao would not keep his experiences and techniques to himself and was willing to share it with everyone. However, today, after watching Feng Zhao's lecture, I feel that Feng Zhao is not one who doesn't know how to maximize benefits. It is more like he doesn't care and isn't afraid. Impressive. Those that had previously doubted Feng Zhao's ability and those that had previously questioned him had one thing on their minds as they watched the broadcast: the style of a master. Shui Jing was in Huangzhou after being invited to lecture, but that did not stop him from watching the live broadcast. A few of his friends beside him were surprised. TSK, old Shui, this fellow speaks even better than you. Shui Jing was not the least bit angry, rather, he sounded gratified. Beaming, he said, "Yesterday when he told me he didn't get nervous, I did not believe him. Now I understand. I feel this little fellow is meant for this profession." At Shanmu Farm, Suho was taking a break from the training and scrolling through his news feed. He realized the top news story mentioned Feng Zhao. To think that he would become popular before me. Hearing Suho, Wu Yi walked over. He was amazed as well. To think that Feng Zhao was so famous. He seems really impressive. Many well-known Muzhou great masters went to his lecture. That means that Feng Zhao is considered a great master too. Feng Zhao's lecture at Muzhou Music Academy was a huge success. You could judge from the number of web hits. The president of the academy was smiling so broadly his creases deepened. He was cocky about his wise decision. After the lecture, at least 10% if not half of the global music student community was now interested in symphonic genres. People who tuned in were also exposed to the name Muzhou Music Academy. That was the biggest achievement. Still, time was limited. There was only so much Feng Zhao could cover in one lecture. Many viewers hadn't gotten their fix when the lecture ended. The president started brainstorming about how he could work with Feng Zhao again. Didn't he need a recording studio? The academy has a recording studio. That would spare you the queue at Odd Music. We'll prepare the best recording studio for you. But others had the same idea. The chief executive of Odd Music had already extended an invitation in person. The Odd Music CEO responded to the president's offer with a casual laugh. "Old friend, why don't you save that outdated equipment for your students? For a professional recording, you'll need to come to Odd Music. Let's put it this way, the best recording equipment in all of Muzhou is at Odd Music. Didn't you bring your own granddaughter to record here on account of our new equipment? Don't fight me on this one." The Odd Music CEO said that, as long as Feng Zhao was willing, he could offer him a recording studio for free right away. While the official word was that their studios were fully booked, the company reserved 2 studios for internal use in case of emergencies. They were equipped with the best gear. The Odd Music CEO was quite enthusiastic and very polite. He also offered many perks. Feng Zhao had no reason to refuse. "Have you contacted teacher Feng from the symphony? If not, we can recommend a few alternatives," the smiling chief executive said. Among the attendees of Feng Zhao's lecture were several key members of Muzhou's major symphonies. They had been waiting to approach Feng Zhao since the end of the lecture. When the Odd Music CEO made his comment, the small group, whose ears were already perked, pounced to pitch their own symphonies. Musical tastes were not as sophisticated in Muzhou compared to Lizhou. There were few symphony orchestras and none of them had a global reputation. That was why every one of their collaborations with world-renowned master musicians was hard-earned. With Feng Zhao's visit, the few major orchestras went at it again. Given that symphonies were gaining popularity among youngsters again and that Feng Zhao was a key figure behind this renaissance, this was too good an opportunity to pass up. The Odd Music boss stood silently nearby and ignored the imploring looks from the folks that crowded over. He just stood and smiled, waiting for Feng Zhao to respond. Saying too much would come off as sycophantic and backfire. He had secured his deal. Everything else could wait. Feng Zhao scanned the folks who had rushed forward to tout their services. Some of them were leaders of their orchestras. Others were first chairs of their respective sections. "What's the name of your orchestra? How big is the orchestra? What's the latest?" Feng Zhao zoomed in on of the people in the crowd. "I'm Daller, the leader of SoundCloud Philharmonic. I'm also first violin. Our orchestra is 10 years old. We have 80 musicians." Daller passionately gave Feng Zhao the lowdown on his orchestra. SoundCloud was one of the larger orchestras in Qingqing. Now that symphonic music was more popular, he wanted to recruit more musicians. All these years, they had never worked with a master. It wasn't a matter of quality. The few large orchestras in Muzhou were comparable in skill, but things just never came together for SoundCloud. Lo and behold, he had been called on by Feng Zhao this time. Of course he would make a hard sell. An orchestra comprising 80-odd musicians was a large one for Muzhou, where symphonic music wasn't the rage, but it still paled in comparison to the orchestras in Yanzhou. Even Sci-Leveler Wing had a company orchestra made up of 100-odd musicians, and there were many outstanding instrumentalists on the waiting list. Even if they were short a few musicians, they could find replacements easily. They could also expand on short notice. It was a well-endowed department. But things were different over here. Even though Muzhou boasted many orchestras, most were smaller ones. There were no more than 5 large orchestras in the continent. Even though they advertised themselves as professional orchestras, they weren't up to par by global standards. A regular performance calendar was the first step toward professionalization. All top professional orchestras had fixed seasons, but not in Muzhou. Muzhou's orchestras weren't treated with respect. They were invited for the occasional performance, such as at a major farm owner's banquet or the opening or closing ceremony of a shepherd dog contest. Their sole purpose was entertainment. It wasn't fair for Feng Zhao to evaluate orchestras in Mazao based on Yanzhou standards. The reason he had called on Dowler was because Dowler had listened attentively during the lecture and showed a dogged passion. The enthusiasm brimming from his eyes suggested a purity of purpose lacking in the others. Of course, Dowler was also angling for his own personal interests, but genuine music lovers were hard to find, 1 in a million. To spot someone in this crowd who was relatively pure was a decent find. To prove his orchestra's worth, Dowler summoned his fellow musicians to perform a few pieces at the recording studio Odd Music had arranged. Even though they couldn't rival Cy Wing's highly paid orchestra, Feng Zhao couldn't spot too many mistakes. These were all original compositions. Feng Zhao asked Dowler after the set. Yes. It's nothing compared to what you find in Yanzhou, but we learned a lot from your lecture and will improve from here on out. The middle-aged Dowler was quite uptight before Feng Zhao, who was dozens of years his junior. His tone conveyed a mix of caution and expectation, like a student showing off in front of a teacher. Since Dowler himself acknowledged there was room for improvement, Feng Zhao didn't offer any feedback. He instead asked, "You plan on going professional?" "Yes, that's the plan, but we still have a lot of work to do." Dowler didn't hide his ambition. When he had founded the orchestra, he'd wanted it to become Mazao's first professional orchestra in the new era. Feng Zhao slapped Dowler on the back and said, "Pretty good." Dowler instantly felt more confident and couldn't refrain from smiling. But when he turned around to manage the orchestra, his serious face returned. Many of SoundCloud's musicians were puzzled. "He's so authoritative when he speaks to us. How come he acts like a primary student in front of that kid Feng Zhao?" Feng Zhao started recording soon after. Sometimes composers would double as conductors. Such was the case with Feng Zhao. Because of his high standards, the session didn't start smoothly, but things eventually improved. Zhuo Yu was a bit baffled. It was only a matter of days before they returned to Yanzhou. Why not wait and record with the orchestra at Sci Wing? They might even finish earlier. Was Feng Zhao worried about fuel costs for the flying transport? Considering his winnings from the shepherd dog contest, there was no point in being stingy. But Feng Zhao had decided to stay put in Mazao and work with a local orchestra at a local studio. The recording ended up taking up 10 days. After completing a rough cut in 7 days, Feng Zhao recorded additional segments in the final 3 days. And these were all preliminary recordings. Post-production would be necessary for a finished product, but that would wait until Feng Zhao returned to Yanzhou. All parties had signed a confidentiality agreement, including SoundCloud and Odd Music. They would be barred from divulging the contents of the recording session before their official release. Done yet. It was the third time Shui Jing had called Feng Zhao. Feng Zhao had been busy recording the past few days, so he was in sparse contact. Shui Jing had waited until he felt the timing was right before reaching out to Feng Zhao again. "We just finished," Feng Zhao said. "Then hurry on over to Huangzhou. We're waiting for you." Shui Jing wanted to go on a global lecture tour with Feng Zhao. He'd made up his mind after watching Feng Zhao's live webcast. He had sorted out the details with the Music Association and more or less confirmed their itinerary. All they were missing was Feng Zhao. After finishing recording in Mazao, Feng Zhao packed up his things and headed to Huangzhou with Zhuo Yu in tow. Curly Hair stayed at Shanmu Farm to continue training and entering competitions with Suho. Before he left, Feng Zhao gave Wu Yi $10 million to bet on Dongshan Farm every time they competed. ________________________ The point of the global tour was to promote his own book, but Shui Jing also wanted to give Feng Zhao the exposure. How many musicians of Feng Zhao's age could stage a global lecture tour? It would help pad Feng Zhao's resume. Many people thought Feng Zhao had practically become Shui Jing's final disciple. Why else would Shui Jing spend so much effort helping this young man? Final disciple? You mean Feng Zhao? Shui Jing got a kick out of the question. Perhaps you have overestimated me and underestimated the kid. Shui Jing's answer was also made public, but no one bought it. Everyone thought Shui Jing was simply promoting Feng Zhao. Even though he gave a decent lecture, it didn't mean that Feng Zhao had achieved the same stature as Shui Jing. Out of the world's 12 continents, the most frequent stops on any global lecture tour were the 8 regular continents. Because of their unique histories, musical tastes were less sophisticated in the 4 special continents. Even though Feng Zhao's appearance in Mazao caused a stir in the local music industry, for the masses, it was still less important news than other local happenings. Many folks marked their calendars well in advance. Rare was the fool who was willing to reveal his trade secrets. Who didn't want to tune in? Admission wasn't that expensive and it would spare you the agony of figuring things out yourself. What a great deal. Why not attend? Feng Zhao had no time to play tourist after arriving in Huangzhou. The next day, he kicked off his lecture tour with Shui Jing. Their stops were mainly higher education institutions. In continents with a greater passion for music, they scheduled extra sessions to include stops at other schools. Even though these stops were less popular than stops at music academies, attendance was still decent. No matter how high one flew, there would always be detractors. Furthermore, Feng Zhao was so young and only had a few compositions. Even if his global lecture could raise his status in the music world, compared to many other figures with power and prestige, he was still quite far off. It was not that Feng Zhao did not speak well, rather that the rules were set this way. Although Feng Zhao did compose a few decent movements and received an invitation from Fiery Bird, that did not mean he was of the same standing as many famous great masters across the world. One's works and experience were considered too. Feng Zhao did not have enough works, and his experience was not as rich as other great masters. Therefore, for the global lecture tour, Shui Jing would speak for 3/4 of the allocated time and Feng Zhao would speak for the remainder. Even if Shui Jing wanted to allocate a larger portion to Feng Zhao, it was not possible. Everyone conceded that Feng Zhao had talent and outstanding works. However, he was still young. Who knew if he'd use up all his talent quickly? Talent was something hard to define. It could accompany a person throughout his life, or it could diminish in the next moment. Elders in the music circles had seen many such examples. Thus, how far Feng Zhao could climb and whether or not he would reach the expectations that Shui Jing had, many of them still had reservations. However, they approved of Feng Zhao's willingness to share his knowledge with everyone. Whether they had any thoughts behind the facade of approval, they would still publicly praise Feng Zhao's selfless sharing. Of course, there were people who felt that Feng Zhao's musical style was lacking in experience. He might have been an expert in the heavy and thick styles for large-scale events or battle scenes in big productions, but in the eyes of those experienced people in the music circles, it was still inadequate. Not to say that he had to be an all-rounder. He had to touch upon other aspects or produce more works. Otherwise, there was not enough proof that he deserved the title of a great master. People who had seen Feng Zhao's background felt that his foundations were not solid enough and he had risen thanks to Shui Jing as well as the Music Association's publicity. Feng Zhao. He still isn't qualified enough. This was the evaluation given by a certain great master when interviewed during the lecture tour. Shui Jing was worried that Feng Zhao would be affected by the assessments of people both within and outside of the music circles. After every lecture, the media would always raise that certain great master's evaluations and want to know Feng Zhao's response. But Feng Zhao's reactions to this was always the same, oh. Oh. That's all. The person in charge of interviewing was helpless. Why doesn't this little fellow give more of a reaction? The evaluations and judgments within the music circles were all different. Feng Zhao himself paid no heed. He was very busy, how could he find the time to browse through every single evaluation from the music circles? Feng Zhao was not interested in seeing all these either. Outside of the lectures, Feng Zhao was always busy. Shui Jing realized that, although Feng Zhao had less speaking time and fewer conferences to attend, Feng Zhao was still busier than himself. What are you preparing this time? Shui Jing asked. Settling matters for Muzhao's side, Feng Zhao replied. Shui Jing knew that Feng Zhao had jointly purchased a farm with a friend from Muzhao. He was not particularly interested in farms. Every year, many people would send him some Muzhao agricultural products as gifts. He did not really cherish these goods, so he did not ask much. Feng Zhao was speaking the truth, he really was very busy. He was editing a video from the footage that both Dongshan Farm and Shanmu Farm had sent over. He watched both once before editing a portion and then playing the edited version together with the accompaniment music. After that, he made adjustments to it. Sci-Leveler Wing's virtual projects department was roped in to help Feng Zhao with editing the video and compiling the music. Combining video and music required a lot of adjustments and amendments to improve on it till the artistic result was satisfactory. Other than that, Feng Zhao would receive a report every day from Wu Yi regarding information from their side and the situation over there. Today, Wu Yi made a call to Feng Zhao. Your dog. Wu Yi wanted to say something but hesitated. What happened? Feng Zhao asked. I told you before, his capacity for learning sheep herding is very strong, Wu Yi said. Yeah. I used to think that your dog did not know anything about herding sheep, and that after coming, he would surely learn a thing or two from the dogs on my farm. Feng Zhao indicated that he was listening attentively. But I realized that I was wrong, very wrong. The dogs on my farm have been led astray by your curly hair. When Feng Zhao had still been in Muzhao, he would bring curly hair out running every night. After Feng Zhao had left for his global lecture tour, Curly Hair would still retain that habit and head out to run while the other dogs slept. Feng Zhao had mentioned this to Wu Yi and told him not to mind as long as it did not leave the farm compound. After all, this was also training. At the start, Wu Yi had personally monitored Curly Hair. After becoming used to it, he'd only instructed his workers to pay a little attention every night. Until, one night, Bingo and a few other farm dogs followed Curly Hair out of curiosity. The one dog out running every night had become an entire pack. During the first few days, Wu Yi had not found it to be a big problem and just thought that maybe it was helpful for his own dogs. Running more would strengthen their bodies and could be useful for the last Eastern Region finals. After that, the employees told Wu Yi that the dogs had actually gone hunting for field mice. Furthermore, it was Bingo who'd taken the lead. As the farm's ex-boss, Bingo was familiar with the farm and naturally was familiar with the field mice too. The situation rapidly developed, and the pack of dogs would run out to hunt field mice every night. Wu Yi was distressed. That was the job of mousetrap robots. Why had this bunch of shepherd dogs joined in? Wu Yi specially hired a veterinary team to look after them and prevent parasites, bacteria, or other harmful organisms that might affect their competition performance. The news he'd received from Suho was like this. Master Zhao, we have won. Today was intense and there were no wrong commands. Hopefully, they will maintain today's condition. We have won. There is no doubt. Won again and again. Today we lost only 4th place. We only got 1 point to add to our accumulated score. Bingo ate a field mouse and ended up with diarrhea and did not perform. Wu Yi said that the 10 million he wagered on Master Zhao's behalf was lost. However, we have earned quite a bit from the previous few rounds. Still earning despite losing this time. As long as we win it back next time, all will be fine. As long as we can get a first place finish, we will squeeze into the top 10. Top 10 achieved. Next target, top 8. One more win. The competition is tough, the other teams frequently score well too. Top 8. Top 8. We achieved top 8. We have secured our place in the finals. The finals. Ha 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 ha. In 2 months, Dongshan Farm's accumulated points had risen rapidly, and the farm's reputation kept increasing. Everyone knew that Dongshan Farm's lead dog was a little curly-haired dog that was particularly impressive. As their strength and reputation rose, the odds became lower and lower, to the point that Wu Yi did not even have the intention to wager but did so anyway to support their own team. With the rise of their reputation, many people in the eastern region knew that it was Suho that had purchased Zishan Farm and changed the name to Dongshan and collaborated with Shanmu Farm to take part in the competition. Of course, there were people who joked about Suho buying a desolate farm and having no choice but to request assistance from another farm, disgracing the Su family name. Regarding all those words, Suho paid them no mind. Now, what he wanted most was to be victorious every round. Every victory was a boost to his confidence. Due to the running together, herding together, catching field mice together, and getting scolded together, the camaraderie between the 7 dogs had gradually grown deeper. The most obvious show of this was that they no longer needed Suho to issue commands. Even if there were mistakes during a competition, a bark from Curly Hair would get a quick reaction from all the other dogs. Only the top 8 teams that acquired the most points during the preliminaries could enter the Eastern Region Finals, where the top 4 teams would qualify for the Continental Sheep Herding Competition. However, this time around, the 8th, 9th and 10th teams had the same number of points and all entered the Eastern Region Finals. Out of the 10 participating teams, the top 4 would be chosen to continue competing with the top 4 teams of the Western Region. Having entered the Eastern Region Finals in 7th place, Suho was so excited that he ran circles around the field. Master Zhao, can you make it back in time for the Eastern Region Finals? Suho asked Feng Zhao during one of their long-distance calls. I can. Hey, Master Zhao, actually, what I wanted to ask is, you mentioned that when the time came and if we qualified for the Eastern Finals, you would compose a piece of background music to use for a publicity film. Hee, I have filmed a decent film over the last 2 days. Master Zhao, is your music ready? Suho knew that Feng Zhao had done the recording at Qingqing previously, but before Feng Zhao had fully completed it, he'd had to leave for his global lecture tour. Now, he still did not know if it was complete. Send over your footage and let me take a look, Feng Zhao said. Suho sent the best footage he had shot over the past 2 days to Feng Zhao. Viewing the video, Feng Zhao felt a dense, childish style assaulting his senses. Suho, who thought himself rather dashing in the footage, was doing parkour. But people who were watching would get the impression that this child resembles a spasming sheep. We had better use mine, Feng Zhao told him. Master Zhao also made one. When did you shoot it? Times when you do not know. Given Feng Zhao's reply, Suho suddenly had an ominous premonition. Can I see it first? Was he handsome and cool? Would it be able to make the crowd shriek? That was what Suho wanted to know the most. Sure, but do not send it out first. Feng Zhao encrypted the completed video and sent it to Suho through a secure channel. He did not wait for Suho's reply. Shui Jing had called him over. Feng Zhao shut off his communications device and entered the conference hall. Today was the last session of the global lecture tour. After this was done, there was still an exchange session with all the old seniors. He would only be able to leave the following day, but he would still be able to make it for Muzhou's Eastern Region Finals. Feng Zhao managed to rush back to Muzhou and reach Shanmu Farm one day before the competition. Wu Yi and Suho were waiting for him, the two of them unable to suppress their grins. Feng Zhao, what is that dog made of? You know, when Bingo ate a field mice and had the runs, I was so scared I nearly had to visit the hospital and lie down myself. Wu Yi had not expected that his one decision would have such returns, and he had placed the hopes of the farm on this competition. Back then, when he had found out that Bingo's stomach was upset, his soul had nearly left his body. Throughout the night, he had spent quite a bit to hire a few famous veterinarians from the eastern region. Luckily, there were no complications and it only affected the next day's performance in the competition. However, all this was secondary. As long as it could recover, the competitions that followed would be no issue. After that, Wu Yi had gotten the vets to check up on every single dog. Probably because they only ate dog food in the past, this time when they ate indiscriminately, there were some reactions. Other than Bingo, the other dogs had some ailments, they just were not so obvious. Only Curly Hair, who had eaten the field mice and nibbled on wild grass, was not affected. The vets checked a few times and their assessment was perfectly healthy. Not a single parasite. However, Feng Zhao could not answer that question either. Back then, on the Black Street, the boss of the drugstore, Ai Wan, had raised this matter and even done a genetics test. That also had not yielded any precise results. Hence, Feng Zhao did not know either. Wu Yi only asked out of curiosity and had not really expected an answer. As he continued, Wu Yi laughed happily again and told Feng Zhao about his cousin bringing her dogs over to the farm 2 days ago. Wu Yi's cousin was the owner of the carrot farm that had been very popular early on in the season. Unfortunately, they had not made it into the finals, whereas the little fellow who had collaborated with Wu Yi had qualified for it. Hence, Wu Yi's cousin had brought her dogs over for an exchange session and to share their thoughts. No one had expected that the two teams of dogs would have a fight. Even the farm's guard dog Chubby Black had joined the fracas and was bitten a few times. It was Curly Hair that helped it take revenge by biting back and removing a few bunches of fur from the other side. Because of this incident, Wu Yi and his cousin had almost had a falling out. Remembering the circumstances then, the sides of Wu Yi's mouth curled slightly. Winning a fight was a good thing. And through this incident, Wu Yi's cousin deeply understood that the small curly-haired dog being the lead of this sheep-herding team was not without reason. That fighting spirit that it possessed was just too strong. However, compared to before, Suho was more silent. When Feng Zhao and Wu Yi were talking, Suho did not utter a single word. I have no idea what's wrong with that little fellow. 2 days ago, he cooped himself up in his room for another day, and when he came out, he had become all silent. Could it be that he had an argument with his family? Wu Yi was puzzled. He had asked Suho a few times, but every time, he realized that Suho seemed embarrassed to reply him and mumbled about not replying. As his attitude toward training was still alright, Wu Yi had not pursued the matter. Young kids were probably like this, as they were maturing, it was normal for their moods to be unstable. Early the next morning, everyone took the flying transport and headed for the competition grounds of the Eastern Region Finals. Compared to the previous rounds of competition, the competition grounds for the finals were much bigger. Many celebrities would be there to spectate and a number of old farm owners who had past glories would be there to commentate. Not only that, the live broadcast would have an explosion in viewer numbers. During the normal competitions, generally, people from the Eastern region would watch the Eastern competitions and those from the Western region would pay attention to the Western competitions. But when it came to the region finals, the entire Muzhou would tune in. People from the Western region also wanted to know which 4 teams would pit themselves against their own superstar teams. Suho had received messages from his classmates back in Qingqing. Qingqing was situated in an area located right in the middle of the Eastern and Western regions. In the past, it was considered part of the Eastern region, then considered part of the Western region after that. Thus, before this, people from Qingqing observing the Eastern region competitions were lesser. Most people there only knew that Suho had bought a farm and stormed into the finals only through media reports. Come on, brother Ho. We will all be watching. Young Soo, I will wager on your team to win. You must put in extra effort. Young Soo, yesterday, eavesdropped on our form teacher saying that if you stormed into the continental finals, she wouldn't hassle you about your absences for class as long as you do not fail your exams. The sheep herding scene was so big in Mazao that, during crucial competition periods, a lot of those working and schooling could watch the live broadcast and most companies and student leaders would approve. This sort of situation would never happen in other continents. Seeing all this, the calm and collected mentality that Suho had trained up with great difficulty during the normal rounds of competition unraveled and he begun to get nervous. Watching the competition were not just his classmates and teachers but other members of the Su family as well. Members of the Su family might not have paid attention to the normal rounds of competition, but for this sort of important day in the competition, they would surely be there. He felt some excitement and some apprehension, and thinking about the publicity video that Feng Zhao had created for him made him feel even more complicated. He had handed the video over to the organizers yesterday. He had watched that video a number of times and every time he saw it, he felt a different feeling. However, compared to Suho's complicated feelings and Wu Yu's nervousness and anticipation, the shepherd dogs were still their old selves. To them, the Eastern Region Finals were not too different from the other rounds of the competition. The competition grounds were just a little larger, the terrain more undulating, and the herding a little more difficult. What was nervousness? They did not know anymore. In any case, as long as they followed Curly Hair, it would be fine. Curly Hair was lying beside Feng Zhao's feet, licking his front paw. Occasionally, when someone mentioned him, he would raise his head and cast a glance before continuing to lie down. Suho had also received a few messages. It was from one of his older female cousins. What she meant was that many members of the Su family were watching the live broadcast. She had already wagered a sum on Dongshan Farm to win, as for how much, she refused to say. An elder male cousin of his sent, "Come on. Little fatty Su." Suho wanted to cry. He was still young and could not bear that much pressure. He thought for a bit, found an excuse to retire to the lone restroom, and watched the video Feng Zhao had given him twice more. Much better. Wu Yi realized that Suho seemed too stressed out today and had originally wanted to find him for a pep talk. Although he was nervous too, as an elder, he needed to act calm in front of the younger ones. He had not expected that, when Suho came out, he was full of fighting spirit and vigor. This made Wu Yi swallow the words he had prepared. Every single team's viewing gallery, as well as the other viewing halls for spectators at the competition grounds, each had their own holographic projections and sound systems. Mazao people were nouveau riche. Even if they did not understand hardware equipment, they still used very high-quality ones. This was because, when they could not tell when the equipment was spoiled, they would just purchase a more expensive one. Before the competition, there would be a segment where every team got to have an introduction and publicize themselves. This was a good time for an advertisement and it was free of charge. Almost the entirety of Mazao would watch it. Suho had drawn number 8 for his entering sequence, which would be toward the back. The publicity film would also be shown in the order of the entering sequence. The previous 7 teams' brief introductions were more or less the same. They were all reputable farms and were just promoting their brand name. Therefore in their publicity films, the ones that occupied the most screen time were the farm owners, followed by the star dog of each team, and then all sorts of that farm's products. Almost there. Wu Yi was a little excited. He had not seen the video yet. Suho had been too embarrassed to show it to him. However, Suho had told him that, other than the participating dogs, the video would also feature Shanmu Farm's name and Wu Yi would make an appearance. That was enough for him. Next up is the team that rose abruptly in this year's Eastern Region sheep herding competitions. I'm sure everyone is already familiar with them. Moreover, the owner of this farm is extremely young. The rapid rise was a surprise to many, but now they have achieved the qualifications to enter the Eastern Finals using their own strength. The commentator's voice echoed all around and was followed by a broadcast of the video submitted by Dongshan Farm. Those watching the competition perked themselves up, especially those from the western region of Mazao. They did not know much of the Eastern terms, but they were curious about Suho. What sort of publicity film would little fatty Su put out? Would he publicly declare war on his half-siblings? Whoa, even thinking of that made all these people excited. At the start of the film came Suho's voice. I wish to take part in a sheep herding competition. I want to take part in the finals. This was something Suho had said many times. A youngster with a childlike face appeared on the screens to go along with those innocent, stubborn words. His eyes held a crazed self-belief, as if he had grasped tomorrow in the palm of his hands. Even if people did not recognize Suho by name or background, just by looking at the image, most people could see that he was a pampered fatty from a rich family. And his straightforward talk of wanting to take part in the finals was in fact an exaggerated opinion of his own abilities and a display of the ignorant have nothing to fear. The background music bellowed and brought with it incredible thick-set emotion. It was not intense but slow, and the flimsy string tone seemed to foretell something. A string of words appeared on the display. I borrowed money to purchase a farm, but it was not as I had expected. Suho had only appeared a month after the sheep herding season had started through buying a participating farm and obtaining their qualifications. This sort of thing happened every year and it was not a rare sight. Before Dongchen Farm had risen to prominence, the information that everyone could obtain online was only a few images of how Zishan Farm used to look like. The small majority who were well informed knew only limited information through word of mouth. Later, when Dongchen Farm became more well known and more people wanted to get to the bottom of the matter, the farm was no longer like that. What was Zishan Farm like when Suho had purchased it? After the words on the display appeared and faded, the image changed. An exquisitely clothed rich young master brought his bodyguards and rode a superior flying transport, traveling a great distance to the western part of Mazao's eastern region to a remote and vast farm. The sound of a flute joined in the melody. It was a flute the Muzhou people were familiar with, a flute that was manufactured in a furnace using clay. It was an ancient method. This sort of flute was rarely used in other continents, at most brought back to keep as a souvenir. In the middle of the bleak and lonely flute melody, the image depicted rotting, worn-out wooden fences surrounding a vast and desolate patch of earth that only had a few weeds growing on it. The rundown courtyard seemed like it had been left alone for who knows how long, braving the winds, sun, and rain. The door was swaying off its frame in the wind. A few dispirited dogs were lying there sleeping, completely uninterested. In the dusky twilight, the tall and faded signboard of Zishan Farm looked insignificant and laughable against the mountain ranges in the background. Two images appeared on the display. One was of the images that were publicly available online, and the other was an image of the farm the first time Suho had seen it after purchasing it. At the same time, an image of the certificate of ownership that Suho owned, which showed the large sum of money used as well as the name of the original owner of Zishan Farm. However, everyone understood that this person would have long escaped. They did not hide anything. This had been added in to Suho's accord, just like a failure displaying his scars for all the curious people to see. Some people would play it down, but it let people understand what had actually happened with one look. This is the rumored incident where young Master Su got cheated. Suho was too anxious. Kids are like this, too impulsive. People who saw this began to discuss. During that time, lots of people online viewed this incident with a look at the fool attitude. There was a woodwind solo as the piano and string accompaniment gradually dissolved. The low sound of a violin played a frail harmony that seemed like slow sighs. In the display, Suho's eyes, which were full of eager anticipation, turned merely like a fish that had leapt out of the water expecting to transform into a dragon. However, as it was falling, it realized that it would land itself in an even worse problem: dry land. A harmony of high and low-pitched strings played, and a feeling of experiencing a drop in elevation, as if an icy cold wind blew across on top of a summit, chilled listeners to the bone. The display faded to black. A square window appeared, glimmering with a little light. Under the window and lit up by the glow was a figure sitting down with his head in his knees. From the plump figure, one could tell that he was probably Suho. The dusky image of Suho sitting alone in the cold and gloomy room was like a young animal caught in a trap, helpless and at a loss. The soft flute tune that carried an air of sorrow diluted. With the blare of a trumpet, the music's sorrowful mood gradually weakened. Drum beats set a measured rhythm, with each beat sounding closer to the ear. In the display, through the square window, the rays of light gradually became brighter. The surroundings of the figure were covered by a sheen of golden light. It was a new day, the sun had come up. Not just from the window, the sunlight entered through the holes in the wall and the doorway. The dark became brighter, dispelling the gloom. The figure that had been quietly sitting there raised his head and slowly moved. He turned to face the window and squinted as the light shined on his face. Looking out the window, the glass had a spiderweb-like crack on it, creating a psychedelic tint as light passed through it. The cracked glass did not block out the entire scenery. After his eyes adjusted to the light, he looked through the window as though he saw something. Getting up, he walked to the dilapidated door and pulled it open. As the sunlight shone on Suho's body, the scene warmed up. His disheveled hair was blown by the wind, and the fresh buds of grass beside his feet swirled up as if they were dancing. A woodwind score brought about a bright and cheery tune full of warmth, as if the lush grassland had faced a gentle and fresh wind that dispersed all the gloomy coldness. The low-pitched sounds of brass, wood, and string carried a firm and mighty tone, giving it a forceful theme. At this moment, the music had a little variation. The accompaniment of brass and string, through a detuning method, became even more intense. Within the persistent beating of the drums, the flute carried a rising strength. The strings were like an explosion of life. Just like the passing of winter, flowers would bloom once more, and the grasslands would return to their former green glory. 2 lines of words appeared on the display. I do not know anything. But I will learn. Previously, the stifling and sorrowful sounds had become more and more feeble. With the bass of a piano, bright and expansive sounds joined in. Every note seemed to be kneaded into the deepest recesses of one's soul. In the display, Dongshan Farm had a few more employees. Suho followed this people as they worked. One of the workers pointed at the soil and was talking. Afterward, he pinched a little soil and placed it in his mouth to try. Suho followed suit and his entire face contorted in disgust. The old man laughed and continued speaking, and Suho squatted at his side, listening attentively. A few old farm owners would not just look at but would try out the soil to understand their farms. Many elders watching this live broadcast flashed knowing smiles. Wu Yi had once said that straw contained the 4 seasons within, and he'd meant it. From the taste of the straw, they could tell its growing process, speculate the changes in the condition of soil, and understand whether changes in climate had affected the harvest. For the same reasons, those that tried soil were just like this too. And in the eyes of many old farm owners, people who did this were responsible farm owners who treated their plot of land seriously, totally different from a foreigner's impressions that they were merchant landowners. What followed immediately after in the display was Suho talking on his communications device and, after that, running toward the flying transport. He did not even have time to change out of his suit. His legs were full of mud, and bits of grass were matted in his hair. After that, the flying transport took off and flew high up. The gust created from the transport blew away all the dried grass on the parking ground. The roar of the engines blended in with the accompaniment, creating an uplifting tempo, and brought about a feeling of flying, heading upward and forward into an empty sky. To know nothing about the world, to be ridiculed, to be treated with contempt, all these are insignificant, as long as we keep moving forward. The melody carried on from the first part and unfolded. The main theme was a string score with a flute accompaniment. The layer tones became thicker and more distinct as the accompaniment expanded. The trumpet's blare continuously uplifted the spirits of the listeners. The tense music became lively and vibrant. The display was now showing an overhead view. Large grasslands full of life could be seen. A flock of sheep was walking about slowly, and a few shepherd dogs were running about vigorously. Beside Shanmu Farm signboard, a cap-wearing Wu Yi stood there smiling. He extended both his arms and gave the youth a hug. To a pleasant partnership. I want to stand on the instructor's platform for a sheep herding competition. In the display, there were eye bags under Suho's eyes. His hair was made even messier by the wind, as if he had not taken care of it in a long time. Paired together with that pale, chubby face of his, it seemed a little comical, yet those 2 youthful eyes were burning with a steadfast desire. From being ignorant to clear-headed, from being at a loss to having an unwavering determination, step by step, they pressed on against this predicament. How it would all end, success or failure. That was not important. The brass leading the tune became high-spirited, and the sonorous beating of the drums became more forceful with each beat, as if following the choice his heart had made. Wu Yi's voice sounded. You need to get them to acknowledge you quickly and let them accept you. After this was a scenario where Suho ate and slept with the shepherd dogs. In the display, after Suho fed the dogs, he would carry his own bowl and sit randomly beside the dogs at the doorstep. He gulped down food that did not look very good. The people of Muzhou could tell right away that was not some exquisite food, it was even worse than what they normally ate daily. At night, he slept with the dogs in the kennel. At the start, when the dogs lazed around, they kept a distance from Suho. The display returned to Dongshan Farm's dog A, Bingo, and a close-up shot of the apparent dislike in his eyes. However, the image changed. Every day, Suho would close the gap with these shepherd dogs, to the point where some dogs would rest next to Suho. No longer with any self-pity, the string music became more vigorous, like a sword drawn and ready to attack. The melody became heavier once again, and the rhythm and tempo increased, gradually intensifying, as if power was flowing in bit by bit. The tone of the harmony changed, symbolizing him constantly working hard. Suho ran through the lush green fields with the shepherd dogs. Over the music, Wu Yi's coarse voice echoed across the grassland. Very good. Continue giving them instructions. Keep up, you have to keep up. Don't be left behind. Run after them. Why not use the field car? because many shepherd dogs would remain guarded against the field car, and it was not beneficial for getting closer to the shepherd dogs. Competition instructors basically would run together with the dogs at the start of training till the dogs had good enough judgment and were capable of reacting on their own. Only then would the distance gradually increase, as the instructor would not need to be close by, feeding instructions. With running came falling. After falling, he would climb back up and continue running. The 3 bodyguards did not stay beside him, they just watched from nearby. Every day, they helped spray medicine and treat all the wounds and cuts on Suho's body. Suho's fair and chubby face lost its fat, and he became tan. Suho was a newbie, and he did not have adequate time to slowly adapt. Therefore, he needed to spend even more time together with the shepherd dogs, running together, herding together, shouting out commands non-stop, shouting the names of every single dog and letting them remember his voice. He had no time to worry about shouting till he became hoarse, he needed to remember all his commands. The display switched to Suho's first competition. He had been so nervous he turned pale, his body had froze, and his frantic mistakes had told everyone that he was a newbie. Seeing this, lots of people thought, with that poor skill, don't even bother appearing and losing face. However, many people watching the broadcast, especially those from the eastern region, fell silent. Because they knew what would happen next. Dongshan Farm's success, as well as their continuous accumulation of points. Suho requests to issue commands. Suho requests to issue commands. Suho requests to issue commands. At different competition venues, different commentators all said the same line. From the display, everyone could see Suho's transformation from his first time giving out commands. From being hesitant and nervous, he became firm and steadily issued the correct commands. In the cheery melody, there would occasionally be a few cumbersome chords. However, these were only momentarily there. It was as if the melody had been entrusted with a sort of intense and unwavering disposition. The rustling of the wind moved forward as the sound of flute and piano seemed a hopeful smile. The display split into 2. On one side appeared Suho requesting to issue commands. On the other side was an everyday situation of Suho training together with the dogs. The tune's turnaround, with the shrill of brass and the flowing piano, was akin to a seedling that had struggled to emerge from the earth and, through much hardship, had grown up into a tall tree capable of withstanding the harshest winds. Even if the later competitions no longer required Suho to step in, everyone knew at that moment that he was not simply standing up there as a decoration. The brass and string medley rapidly ascended, and ascended, and ascended, all the way till it hit a splendid instant. Dongshan Farm have taken first place again and have gotten themselves 10 points. With this, they have secured qualifications into the Eastern Region Finals. Congratulations, Dongshan Farm. The commentator's voice rang out from the display. Suho, who looked like a normal farm employee now, rushed down from his spot on the instructor's platform and hugged the 7 shepherd dogs emotionally as carefree laughter floated from the area. Now at the conclusion of the competition, the screen displayed Dongshan's placing. Suho stood up from the grass, not bothering to wipe away the fragments of grass, sheep wool, and dog fur. Panting, he looked up at the screen and brought a fist to his chest. His heart was throbbing intensely from all the joy, his eyes shimmering with tears. That was the jubilation of victory, and a triumph that his heart had earned. Amidst the cheery melody, each musical note was robust but not conceited. The music was not overpowering nor romantic but intimate yet unyielding, akin to the firm belief that the people of Mazao held toward their motherland and this competition. In the display, the newly constructed Dongshan Farm signage was set up on the grass. The once sparse and empty spaces had been partitioned out, and new shoots were growing in the fields. Amidst the drizzling rain, a new lease of life had been breathed into the farm. Back at Dongshan Farm, Suho was standing in the middle of 2 fields. He took off running against the wind, then suddenly stopped. Turning back in the direction of the muddy road he'd taken, a grin appeared on his muddied face. I might have wept bitter tears after encountering problems, but as I kept moving forward, I realized how far I had come by gritting my teeth and moving forward. The piano played out a beckoning pitch as woodwinds, brass, and strings joined the fray as the entire orchestra converged for the epilogue. The majestic blend of sounds brought about a victorious and proud vibe as warmth flooded the entire body and raised the spirits up. It was as if a young eagle was spreading its wings, waiting for the wind to pick up before flying off in search of new glories. Surging forward with a clear heart and unafraid of the future, this was the spirit of youth. The ending of the video was a group photo. Suho and the 7 shepherd dogs were at the forefront, and at the background stood 2 people. One was Wu Yi, and the other was Feng Zhao. End credits. Videography, Wu Yi, Suho, Feng Zhao. Editing, Feng Zhao, Suho. Soundtrack, Chasing Wind. Composer, Feng Zhao. However, very few people paid attention to the end credits. Even more people were thinking about the Suho depicted in the video. This short publicity film had made people view Suho in a different light. After the video ended, the commentator was silent for close to 5 seconds before he lightened the mood with a joke. "Do you know the sort of person that I dislike the most?" An invited esteemed guest sitting beside the commentator asked, "What sort?" The commentator replied, "Those that are born well off but are still especially hardworking." The esteemed guest laughed, "It can't be helped. We might not be able to see it, but Suho has put in a lot of effort. He is a real role model." Those that were familiar with Suho were bewildered. Huh. Role model. Suho, that retard. Of course, people watching the live broadcast online thought differently. I took a screenshot of the last photo at the end of the video. Everyone take a look at the person standing at the back. Doesn't he look familiar? You were not paying attention when watching. It was obviously mentioned that the person was Wu Yi, the owner of Shamu Farm. Rubbish. Obviously I know that is Wu Yi. I was talking about the other person beside him. Who is that? I don't think he appeared in the publicity video. There were people who quickly recognized him right away. What the FCK, Feng Zhao. Interest in music was indeed lacking in Muzhou. Locals were clueless about many genres and they didn't follow any pop stars, let alone symphonic composers. They didn't bother with musicians except for reading the occasional news item about them. But now, people were interested in the unfamiliar name that appeared in the promotional film for one of the teams competing in the Eastern Regional Finals of the local shepherding competition. Who is Feng Zhao? The curiosity of people who normally only followed agriculture, the weather, and shepherding contests was piqued. They learned from music students that Feng Zhao was a rising star in the world of pop composition. He was widely praised by senior composers and admired by younger fans. This is how some Muzhou natives responded when they got the lowdown. Sounds impressive, but how was Suho able to commission a piece from him? Right, how had Suho managed to get Feng Zhao to compose the background music for his promotional film for the Eastern Regional Finals? But even if they were curious, they had no way of finding out the truth. Of course, what the masses of Muzhou cared about most was Suho and the 7 dogs of Dongshan Farm. The focus of the promotional clip wasn't Dongshan Farm itself but rather the evolution of the farm's young owner. The combination of video and music was quite memorable. The film made people regret teasing Suho in the past. After all, this was a kid still in secondary school, and a hardworking and tough kid at that. Older folks were always drawn to youngsters who worked hard. Some of the parents watching the live broadcast started nagging their children. "Look at how hardworking Suho is, blah, blah, blah." Suho probably never would have imagined in his wildest dreams that he'd become a role model, but he had no time to bask in the glory. He was preparing for battle. Maybe it was the promotional film, but Suho felt a lot more relaxed. In its place emerged an indescribable fighting spirit and a sense that a long-awaited occasion had arrived. When Suho described the feeling to Feng Zhao smiled and responded, "That's called confidence." After the promotional films for all the teams had played, the folks watching the live broadcast realized that the one that left the deepest impression was Suho's. It painted a vivid picture of the young farm owner's personal growth. Okay. The promotional films were a showdown of marketing prowess. Now it's down to business. The spectators settled down and started looking forward to the competition. The Eastern Regional Finals determined which 4 teams would qualify for the Grand Finals. The size of the venue was bigger than regular season venues, the courses were longer, and the pasture was more uneven. It was easy to veer off course, and instructor intervention was much more common than during the regular season. Completion times were also longer. Generally speaking, a decent time was under 10 minutes. Teams that had made the Grand Finals in previous years typically posted times of under 6 minutes, while contenders for the overall first and second places usually finished in about 5 minutes. The goal Wu Yi set for his team was 8 minutes. Under 10 minutes was a bare pass, and a lowly ranked one at that. As long as you exercise good judgment, ask to intervene in a timely manner and signal correctly, you'll be okay. As an instructor, Suho could only monitor the competition venue and master the correct route from a few screens near his pedestal. The route for every final was different. Sometimes the dogs needed to make an unexpected turn. That was when the instructor stepped in. The theme music for the shepherding competition began to play, which meant the finals were about to kick off. Competitors and the viewers scattered all over Muzhou set aside what they were working on to focus on the contest. Discussions were left unfinished. Not only were the viewers passionate about this traditional sport in Muzhou, but many of them had bet on their favorite teams to win. The first team to compete was a veteran competitor. 6 of their 8 dogs had appeared in the regional finals last year. Their preparation was probably precise and methodical, since their dogs didn't betray any signs of nervousness or discomfort. The farm owner also stepped in at the right moments. You could say that the first team completed its routine smoothly. 7 minutes and 16 seconds. That was a decent time, but the farm owner didn't seem to be pleased. His dogs had taken 10 more seconds than they had the previous year. 10 seconds might not be a major gap during the regular season, but in the regional finals, it was enough to make the difference between a top 4 finish or not. Even though he wasn't happy, the farm owner didn't show his temper. He just shook his head, saying during his interview, "The sheep are different this year. They're hard to herd." Hard to herd. The viewers were confused. The commentator didn't elaborate. The second team took nearly half a minute longer than the first, the reason being that the dogs took too long with their turns. "The sheep this year are slow," the farm owner who fielded the second team said. Comments like that initially struck viewers as excuse-making, but after the third and fourth farm owner started voicing similar sentiments, people started wondering. "I paid special attention during the second team's routine," Wu Yi said in the viewing gallery. "The sheep used in the regional finals this year are different from the ones used in the regular season. I should say they look the same, but their temperaments are different. They're bolder and grumpier. That's the problem the fourth team ran into." Halfway through their routine, their flock of sheep nearly dispersed. Several of the sheep even stomped their hooves at the dogs, even snarling at the head dog and almost bumping into it. They're not easy to handle at all. Wu Yi was worried, but he couldn't afford a drop in morale now. He turned and patted Suho on the shoulder. "No worries. It's the same challenge for everyone. Everyone will be taking longer than last year. Don't put too much pressure on yourself." The fifth team to compete is Xiaobi Farm. Let's take a close look. Word is their top dog is angling for MVD in the grand finals. Wu Yi and company turned serious. Their stiffest competition was no doubt Xiaobi Farm. They were first in the regular season and a top contender for first place in the East Finals, even the overall final. Xiaobi Farm's head dog Gold Colt sparked squeals of excitement the moment it entered the venue. The squeals naturally couldn't be heard on the pasture, but there was no doubt Gold Colt was the center of attention among viewers both attending in person in the viewing gallery and watching via live broadcast. This was truly a champion dog that could shepherd by stare. Other continents had their celebrities, while Muzhou had their star dogs. The amount of emotion Muzhou natives poured into their shepherd dogs wasn't something foreigners could comprehend. For them, the dogs competing in shepherding contests were as captivating as star actors or singers. The discussion board of the official website for the shepherding competition had long been flooded with messages. If you watched the contest via virtual reality webcast, the cries were literally shuddering. As the previous few farm owners had said, the sheep used in this year's competition were especially hard to round up. But it was a different story when the dogs of Xiaobi Farm took charge. The sheep trotted much more quickly than in the previous 4 rounds. We're coming up on a curve. Xiaobi Farm has had good luck so far. Their top dog, Gold Colt, is speeding up. It's attacking the head sheep. Change in direction. The sheep have changed direction. Compared to previous teams, Xiaobi Farm mastered the same turn with incredible speed. The whole process was seamless. How about Xiaobi Farm's head dog, Gold Colt? Spectacular. Now that's herding by staring. All in. All sheep are in the pen. Perfect. 4 minutes and 32 seconds. 4 minutes and 32 seconds. That would have been good enough to place first last year, let alone this year with the new sheep. The commentator was so emotional his voice went off pitch, a flaw that was broadcast loud and clear through the excellent sound equipment. He didn't hide the fact that a new species of sheep was used this year. That's the best time of this contest so far. And Gold Colt is a likely candidate for most valuable dog in the grand finals. The commentator turned to his guest, an elderly farm owner. Someone once said that a heavenly dog like this comes only once every 10 years, or even every 20 years. Take Lightning, for example, which won you 5 championships, or King Kong from about a decade ago. And now we have Gold Colt from Xiaobi. The elderly man's farm had won 5 straight championships 20-odd years ago, until his champion dog had passed in an accident. The farm was able to train a new top dog and clinch the overall title again, but they never repeated their legendary run of 5 straight championships. This old farm owner was a top expert when it came to breeding, training, and judging shepherd dogs. That was why the commentator wanted him to offer his input. The old farm owner recalled his beloved champion dog. Gold Colt has definitely cut a dashing figure this year, reminiscent of the heavenly flair of our own Lightning. The atmosphere was tense in the viewing gallery where Feng Zhao and company sat. Everyone was quiet. The only sounds were the speakers relaying the passionate voice of the commentator and his guests' lavish praise. Heavenly dog, Feng Zhao said in a puzzled tone. As soon as Feng Zhao uttered the phrase, he heard an achoo from near his feet. He followed the sound. It seemed that Curly Hair had sneezed. Does he have a cold? Wu Yi shifted his attention immediately. He looked like the sky was about to collapse. The folks in the viewing gallery got even tenser. Wu Yi and his family, as well as their vet team, rushed forward to check on Curly Hair. How does he look? Wu Yi felt like his innards were shuddering. He was worried that Curly Hair might have eaten something outside of his regular diet. Even though the dogs had undergone thorough body checks yesterday and today and were cleared, who knew if they would catch some weird disease at the venue or suffer from stomach trouble? The vet team inspected Curly Hair meticulously. The experts shook their heads. Nothing unusual. Really. The vets were upset their medical judgment was being taken to task. Are you questioning our competence? Or do you want it to be sick? Wu Yi shook his head vigorously. No, of course not. Feng Zhao watched Curly Hair scratch his head with one of his hind legs. He said to Wu Yi, don't worry. He's fine. Let's keep watching. Xiaobi Farm's stellar performance had indeed blown many folks away and put a lot of pressure on the two teams that competed next. Even though the 6th and 7th farms posted decent times, neither came under 7 minutes. If the commentator hadn't revealed the fact that organizers used a new breed of sheep, perhaps some doubters would still have written that off as an excuse. Not everyone could tell the difference between different species of sheep. When the 7th team appeared, Wu Yi and company escorted Su Ho and the dogs to the competition venue. After the 7th team was done, Dongshan Farm was up next. Okay, the 8th team appearing this year has been closely watched. Dongshan Farm also boasts a very special dog. Wu Yi had rushed back by the time the commentator began his spiel. He sat on his chair and his eyes were glued to the screen, as if he didn't want to miss a single frame. And we're off. The commentator raised his voice, putting everyone on notice. The flock has gathered quickly. The herding is going smoothly too. So far, Dongshan Farm's dogs are doing well. Their times are quick. They're the quickest besides Xiaobi Farm, the commentator observed while examining data from his statistician. Wu Yi couldn't sit still. He got up and walked closer to the screen. He clenched his fists and started biting them. His lips were quivering, as if he were praying. Feng Zhao also glared at the screen. He knew a crucial juncture was coming up. The final destination of the flock, either the pen on the left or the right, was decided at the last minute and randomly. It was impossible to predict, often coming down to luck. It was a test of the dogs and instructor's ability to adjust. About halfway through rounding up the sheep, the destination appeared on the big screen. It was the pen on the left. This wasn't good news for Dongshan Farm because their head dog, Curly Hair, was situated on the left flank. By custom, the head dog on the right flank would be responsible for ushering the sheep into the left pen. If your head dog was on the left flank and you wanted to steer your flock left, you had 3 options. The first was for the lead dog to shift to the right flank and force the sheep left. The second involved the instructor directing the number 2 dog on the right flank to steer the flock left. The most conservative option was to stop the flock altogether, then change direction, but that was too time-consuming. Dongshan Farm's number 2 dog was Bingo. The team had rehearsed such a scenario before the contest. They had decided to go for the first option, as Feng Zhao had suggested. The flock is making a turn. They're about to shift direction. Watch the positioning of the dogs. This is the time when the head dog shows what he's made of. Let's see if it can force the sheep to shift direction based on the instructor's guidance, or if they'll stop the flock altogether and then change direction. The commentator pressed on, saliva flying from his mouth. Su Ho has asked to intervene. Oh. Has Su Ho decided to order Curly Hair to switch flanks? Su Ho was shown on screen asking for an intervention. He gave Curly Hair a direct order to switch flanks and steer the flock into the left pen. Pay attention. It's speeding up. Looks like it's going to take a detour. Oh. It's flown straight to the right flank. Not only did the commentator go off pitch, he started stuttering. His guest, the elderly farm owner, also exclaimed, as if he had seen something earth-shattering. The TV screen showed Curly Hair making the cross by speeding up toward the flock, leaping, and then treading on the backs of the sheep, like crossing a pond by stepping on stones. Flying was an exaggeration, but it was indeed a jaw-dropping move. This was a very rare move. Not only was it a test of the dog's leaping ability, the most important thing was not to miss a step or lose footing and plunge amidst the stampeding flock. The dog could get killed either way. Wuyi's heart was thumping so hard it felt like he was about to vomit it. He barely felt the biting wounds on his fists. His eyes were peeled open. He had seen Curly Hair make a similar move during practice, but he would never order him to try it in competition. It was too dangerous. The slightest slip-up and the dog was gone. The commentator responded quickly and passionately. MVD. MVD. No doubt, if Dongshin makes the grand finals, Curly Hair will be a top contender for this year's MVD award. Viewers tuning into the broadcast were miffed by that comment. Hadn't Homeboy just said that Gold Colt was shoo-in for East MVD? And that it was a leading contender for MVD in the grand finals? What a quick reversal. Where was his integrity? The commentator kept on as if he had forgotten what he'd just said, and his integrity at that. He had thrown himself to the wolves on the first day. He was still lost in revelry. I can see his market value growing exponentially. The MVD label could be taken literally or figuratively. Every dog competing in the final would see their market value rise, especially the head dog, and the market price for the MVD in the grand finals would go through the roof. The flock hasn't stopped. It shifted direction. Suho has asked to intervene again. Very good. His timing is great. Dog A, on the other flank, needs to stay on course. The dogs in the back need to hurry up too. This is too sudden of a turn. The flock is speeding up. I have a hunch. The commentator took a deep breath as he examined the latest data. They might. He hemmed and hawed. Inside the viewing gallery, Wuyi was so nervous he could bite his fingers off. His eyes kept darting between the timer in the upper right-hand corner of the screen and the action in the center of the screen. He was so stiff he felt like a fossil. Feng Zhao took in the action on the big screen and laughed. He spit out the 4 words the commentator had held back: set a new record. Wuyi's ears twitched. He clearly heard what Feng Zhao had said, but his brain didn't seem to process the information. His teeth, which were still biting his fists, started clattering. The flock is heading into the pen. Into the pen. They're all in. 4 minutes and 20 seconds. 4 minutes and 20 seconds. The commentator screamed at the top of his voice and howled hysterically. Since the format of the competition was reformed 80 years ago, the best time posted in the East has been 4 minutes and 21 seconds. That record was set by the team led by the so-called Heavenly Dog Lightning, which won 5 straight national championships. Now Dongshin Farm has broken the record by 1 second. If we didn't swap sheep, the record would have been slashed by at least 10 seconds. Wuyi felt like he had taken everything in and his brain went blank at the same time. His lips were quivering and he could barely put a sentence together. Ni new record. Yup, Feng Zhao responded. Feng Zhao thought to himself, if these were battle dogs from the end of days, the sheep would be in the pen within a minute, at most 2 minutes, without instructor intervention. But considering this was the new era and that Mazao had enjoyed a peacetime of some 500 years, this was a decent showing by ordinary farm dogs. Feng Zhao started to understand why Mazao's founders decided to make shepherding a tradition. It was just like mandatory military service in the new era. Even though vested interests were at play, the competition and the training leading up to the contest kept the service dog or wild dog DNA in these dogs alive. If the geopolitical landscape changed, these dogs could be quickly drafted as battle dogs, just like during the apocalypse. The melody of Chasing Wind at its climax was played and Feng Zhao turned to look at the big screen. Suho had left the instructor's podium and dashed toward the 7 dogs resting by the finish line. His face was covered in tears. He cried and laughed at the same time. Organizers used Chasing Wind as the background music for this scene. It was the BGM of the moment, of Suho's moment. Like and subscribe.